Hello everyone, this is Mr. McGee from Parkway West. Today I want to talk about fasteners. There is a whole broad spectrum of different types of nuts, bolts, rivets, two-phase tape, anything we can use to hold stuff together. But in particular, I want to talk about the actual nuts and bolts of the situation here. This particular week that you're working on, depending on where you're at in the class, this week is going to be geared to nothing more than identifying fasteners. Some of the biggest problems that I encounter in this industry is people will take, say, a half-inch bolt, they'll mistake it for maybe a 12-millimeter bolt or an 11-millimeter bolt, and they'll try to run it down through the hole, and they'll do a lot of damage to the threads of both the bolt and or the hole that you're going down in, or the nut, or whatever it may be. You may get a situation where you put a bolt in where it seems to thread in fine, but it's actually a little bit loose in the hole. Then you go to apply torque to it, and then it just rips the threads right out. So the object of this is to get you to properly identify bolts, be it SAE, be it metric. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the expectations for the week, and then we're going to talk a little bit about fasteners. So here we go. Okay, for this week, you will be given a pamphlet just like this, and you'll notice on the front of it is a ruler, both in inches and in centimeters and millimeters. So you can use this later on in the week when you're tasked with identifying these bolts here. That's the first thing in this pamphlet. The second page, if I can get it to open, is just some basic types of fasteners that are out there. Hex bolts, wood screws, sheet metal screws, machine screws, socket set screws, just a general familiarization. But what really matters and what we're going to focus on the most this week is down at the bottom of the page. You're going to see information on US bolt markings and metric bolt head markings. This is what we're primarily going to emphasize on, because this activity that you're going to be doing, you're going to be working on identifying two different types of bolts. You're either going to have a US bolt or an SAE bolt, or you're going to have a metric bolt. So the object of the game, first of all, is to identify which is which. And when you're looking at a bolt like this, if I can get the glare off it, you can see the hash marks around the perimeter of the head. There's 3 of them. If you see marks like that, that means this is a US bolt. And if it's a US bolt, that means that the diameter of the bolt, right where my fingers are, the distance across from here to here, that's the diameter, will be in inches or fractions of an inch. The length of the bolt, which is measured from the end of the threads to just under the bolt head. Okay, the length of the bolt is right here from the edge of the threads to just under the bolt head. That will also be in inches and fractions of an inch. The other thing is what we call thread pitch. Thread pitch is the coarseness or fineness of these threads. Now, you can have what would be a coarse thread. As you can see, these threads are pretty far apart. Or you can have a fine thread. And if you look closely at this, you'll see that the threads are pretty close together. Now, when you're talking about a US bolt, that would be with the hash marks on the head, you're talking about the diameter being in fractions of an inch, the length being inches and fractions of an inch. The thread pitch, what you're going to do is you're going to measure, I don't have my ruler with me right now, but we do have the ruler on the front of the page. You're going to measure the 1 inch of thread So this here to here is 1 inch. You're going to lay your bolt there and you're going to count the threads in a 1 inch increment. This one here, if you were to do that, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 13 threads per inch. So this would be a grade 5 bolt. There's 3 hash marks, which means it's a grade 5. If there's 6, it means it's a grade 8. Grade 8 bolt, or grade 5 bolt. This is 1/2 inch in diameter. I don't recall the length of it right now, but we can lay it here and we can identify, if the camera's working well, we can identify that that is a 3 inch long bolt because we're measuring to under the head. And from right here to right here, we have 13 threads per inch. So that's how a US bolt is measured. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, if we are unsure of the threads per inch, if they're that fine and we can't count them, we have a thread pitch gauge. And these are available in metric and in US. This one happens to be a metric one. I don't know if I can catch the glare just right, but it's stamped on it, metric. So we're going to use this if we're looking to thread pitch for metric bolts, but if we had the US one, we could take it and we could drop these teeth on here in the threads, and when we get one that lines up perfectly, then we can read the numbers on there and we could determine how many threads per inch there are. So that's the US bolt. Now we know that we have the identifying mark says that that's the hash marks, that's the hardness of the bolt, and we know that this is a US bolt. So all measurements, when we put them back here on this chart in the back, we know if we have a US bolt, and I can get the page open. First thing we would do is put a check mark right here by the SAE. And if it's SAE, we're not going to put anything here on the metric now, are we? No, of course not. So we're going to write the grade down, the length of it in inches, the thread pitch will be threads per inch, and the diameter, all US fractions of an inch. Now let's say we get a bolt that has numbers on the head. If I can get this close enough so we can see it, you'll identify an 8.8, which is upside down. There. That's an 8.8. As soon as you see that, you know that this is a metric bolt. Now, the 8.8 is simply just as the hash marks are on a US bolt, they indicate the hardness. The 8.8 indicates the hardness of this type of bolt. Now, once we see these markings on this bolt, we know it's a metric bolt. So, do you think we're going to have our measurements in inches, or is this going to be metric measurements? I would hope you would say metric. So, in that case, all our measurements, most of our measurements, are done in the same manner. We have the diameter of the bolt, which will be